रमाइलो भइरहेको छ होला। सो अब चाहिँ हाम्रो नेक्स्ट गेस्ट स्पिकर पनि हामीसँग आइसक्नु भयो जस्तो छ। सो उहाँ चाहिँ जुलिया सेटलिक, करेन्टली फ्रम सिङ्गापुर, हु इज अ लर्निङ एन्ड डेभलपमेन्ट intern at KPMG for mental health and is currently pursuing her degree in psychology and global management. She is also the founder of Generation Impact, which is a social enterprise aimed at empowering youth to make a difference. She is also a TEDx speaker. Let's welcome her. Hello, Julia. Are you there?
Hello, everyone.
Hello.
I would like to unmute myself. Oh, Zoom wants things from me. Thank you for having me here. I have to apologize for the organizers. I know that I haven't been super responsive this past week. So just a heads up, like I'm sorry for having you wait for my emails, but I'm glad I'm here today. A few updates. I think you have an outdated bio for me. I'm actually done with my bachelor's degree now, and I'm not in Singapore anymore. But that doesn't really matter. I mean, you really don't see what's out of my window anyway, so you can pretend I'm in Singapore. That's super fun. But for those of you who want to know, I am in Berlin, Germany right now.
Thank you. It was not a problem. We knew that you would surely come there. So
I'm glad. So far, I haven't missed a presentation with you all because I think you're all great.
Exactly. So thank you. We are very delighted to have you with us. And before starting our session, please let our audience know a bit more about Generation Impact.
Oh yeah, sure. I'm happy to talk more about that. So Generation Impact is a resource platform for young people who want to make a difference in the world. So with like different social impact work that I've been doing, I just ran into a lot of young people like yourselves who want to make the world a better place. And I realized that like there are so many resources out there. There's so many organizations like Next Gen or V Studio that help young people make a difference. But what we're really missing is kind of a place to find all of them, because a lot of these organizations don't have the money to be on top of the Google list. So what I created was a resource browser that's all about you can say what you want to do, how you want to make a difference, and it gives you different organizations and resources and thoughts and ideas on how you can make a difference. So if you want to check that out, I can put that in the chat. But yeah, I think today we're going to talk a bit about something else. Oops, I only sent it to one person. Let me make sure that I'm just going to send it to everybody.
That is completely fine. So
there we go.
We need some people like you. You, along with Generation Impact, has been doing great work. So thank you very much. Now, without any further delay, I would like to request you to start the session on mental health. Over to you, Julia.
Thank you. Let me share my screen for that, actually. I know that I only have 30 minutes for this, so I'm going to try to be brief. Like, this is what I do for work. Like, this is usually what I do every day. So condensing all of that into 30 minutes is not going to be super easy. But I'm going to do my best to give you a little bit of a theoretical insight. I think sometimes it just helps to understand our brain a little bit better. And usually people are very interested in psychology and things like that. So I'm going to give you a bit of a theoretical overview about mental health. I'm going to share a little bit about my own story with mental health. And then at the end, I'm going to make sure that I share some practical things as well, because that's also really important, because otherwise you're going to leave here and be like, well, now I can define mental health, but that doesn't help me at all in taking care of my mental health. And then hopefully at the end, we're going to have some questions that I can try to answer. I don't know if I can answer them. That depends on the question. But yeah, let me share my screen. That's not... All right, can you all see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Wonderful. Let me just make this small so I can see my screen as well. All right, so we're going to talk about mental fitness. And I like that word because I feel like and I deal with this at KPMG a lot, actually, because we don't like the word mental health because it makes us think that we're like crazy and that we're like ill or that we're going to hurt each other. So let's talk about mental fitness. And that's really not to say that I'm going to talk about something other than mental health, but to take this as an opportunity to just use the nomenclature that we want. And I think that's a really important part about mental health, is that you can choose what language you can use. You don't have to say that you're taking care of your mental health. You can say that you're strengthening your mental fitness, and you're basically doing the same thing. But just by choosing the language that you use, we can change how people perceive us, and we can change how we perceive ourselves. So if you feel weird thinking, oh, today I'm going to take care of my mental health, or oh, my mental health is not too low, you can just say, oh, my mental fitness hasn't been strengthened these past couple of months and I need to go to the mental gym. So I'm a big believer in just changing the language and how we talk about mental health to make us feel more empowered. So a bit about me, we can jump over this part because I'm actually not that important. But yeah, I think in the beginning we talked about my TED Talk a little bit. And I want to start with that actually, because I had lots of fun doing it and it was great. I love public speaking. This is my thing. You can watch it if you want to. If not, that's super fine. But the TED Talk is something where people are really impressed with it. But what a lot of people don't know is that just like the week where I was giving that TED Talk, and I think you don't really see it in the video, I was a complete mess. I was like crying every day. I like didn't even know whether I was going to be able to do the conference that I was talking about in my TED Talk. So for those of you who haven't watched it, in the talk, I'm talking about a conference that I'm going to be leading. But I was at a point in my life where I didn't actually know whether I was going to be able to go to the conference because I was just so unhealthy. So to go back from that a little bit, this was in high school when I was still in high school, and I completely overworked myself. I just had so many different things going on, and then there were external circumstances that were happening in my private life, and I was just really at a limit. And the reason that happened was partially because, and we're all great leaders and great change makers here, that I prioritized my team and my change making projects above myself, because I figured, hey, like if I'm going to be a little bit more stressed, or if I'm going to be a little bit exhausted, then it's worth it because it's all for the benefit of my team, right? But this was a really pivotal point in my life, because when like that week was just like really I was really, really exhausted. I eventually told my team, I don't know if I can go on this conference, which obviously was not great for my team to hear like a week before the conference that their leader is maybe not going to be part of it, or that I'm not feeling mentally healthy enough to do it. And in that moment, I had this huge aha moment, and that was, oh my God, like if I take care of my mental health, it's not about only taking care of myself. It's about enabling me to help other people. And if I am not healthy, I can't support others. So for those of you who, like me, like to exhaust yourself and kill yourself over helping other people, let's stop that. Because if you can't start taking care of yourself for you, and I know that's sometimes hard to do, like we don't like doing something for ourselves because it seems selfish, but then do it for others. Do it to support the people around you better. Because if you're really honest with yourself, you're probably also going to notice that when you're not at your mental best, if you're exhausted, if you're mentally unwell, then you are not the best person for the people around you. You are going to be stressed. You're going to be like angry at them quicker. You're going to be lashing out at things. You're going to say things that you don't mean. So keep this in mind. So like maybe we can start this with the intention of, hey, let's not only do this for ourselves. Let's do it for the people around us who are really going to benefit if we are at peace with ourselves. So one nice way I like to look at mental health, that it's really about energy. Of course, there's different ways in which we can have energy. We can have social energy, we can have emotional energy, we can have cognitive energy. But really if you don't know anything about mental health, then energy is a good idea, because if you're low on mental health, it typically feels like you don't have energy. As opposed to if you are balanced, and then you use up as much energy as you create. So we often talk about this thing like during your day, you go to school, you go to university, you have a job, all these things require energy, and this energy has to come from somewhere. And if we use up more energy than we create, that's where we're going to have not enough energy, and that's where we're going to be mentally unhealthy. But I also want to talk about this part, and that's the energy surplus, because a lot of times we focus on these two. I don't actually know if you're seeing what I'm highlighting here. Can you see what I'm highlighting? I'm just going to hope that you do. But yeah, often we focus on this. We're trying to get from not enough energy to balanced. But really, like about all the things that we do, the goal is actually to get to here. So what I sometimes like to encourage people who are like, oh, but like, taking care of myself is kind of selfish. I like to encourage people to think about, oh, what would you do with an energy surplus? What would you do if at the end of the day, you weren't just like, okay, well, I'm not exhausted, but I'm just kind of at peace. And that itself can be hard. That itself is a goal for a lot of people. But what if you, at the end of like an 8-hour workday, you said, that was cool. I still want to do other projects. So maybe you would start your own initiative. Maybe you would learn a language. Maybe you would spend more time with your family and friends. So this is really a goal that's not only about being mentally healthy. Does not mean we're not sick. It means that we're strong. It's like when people don't take care of their bodies, even if they're not sick, that doesn't mean that they're mentally healthy. So the goal is not only to get to balance, the goal is really to get to the energy surplus. So this leads me to the elements of mental health, because partially I think this is what we think about a lot. We think about people who have mental illnesses, who have been diagnosed with a mental illness, maybe who have depression or anxiety, or these words probably mean something to you. And then we think about healing our mind a lot. And that is super important. And that's where people probably need professional help, and where they need a counselor or a therapist, or like that's usually good. And that's really about when you have an illness and you need help. And I'm not a trained clinical professional, but you should seek those out. But I just want to say that you should seek professional help for that. But what I want to focus on is strengthening your mind and building resilience. And building resilience is really about making sure that we know that before a crisis, after a crisis is always before a crisis. Like, we may at the moment be like, oh my God, like I just want COVID to be over. I just want COVID to be over. But your truth is, after COVID, there's going to be something else. And if it's not a global pandemic, it's going to be something in your own life. So it's like, I don't like the sentence after a crisis is before a crisis, but that's unfortunately how it is. And that's why it's about building resilience and taking the time when we're feeling good, when we're in that energy balance, we're like, I don't really have a problem right now, but you should still take care of yourself, because at some point or another, you're going to face a crisis and you want to be better prepared for that. It's like going to the gym. It's making sure that you lift those weights, because one day your mom is going to call you and she's going to be like, carry these things. And you're going to be like, yes, I'm strong now. I can do that. And that's really about strengthening our mind and getting into that energy surplus, because at some point you're going to be not only be mentally healthy, but you're going to be strong. You will be able to do things that you don't normally are able to do. So this is a short crash course in psychology. I really like this Venn diagram because it explains psychology really well, especially because people are always like, oh, what's more important? Our thoughts, our physiology? Is it my hormones? Is it my friends? It's really all of it. This is the sign for psychology, by the way. So whenever we look at pretty much anything in psychology, we're going to have our biology play a role. We're going to have our socioculture play a role. So your friends, your family, your social circle, like anyone who you meet and anyone who you're around, but also your culture, the country that you live in, your sociocultural background, your skin color. All of that interacts to form your mental state, to form any psychological phenomenon that we have. And I think on this side, I want to say just very briefly that, of course, a big part of taking care of our mental health is to strengthen our social networks. And that's the hardest part of the global pandemic. It's because our ways in which we can foster our social structures and our support network is so much harder at the moment. But that's really where that part becomes important in mental health. And then, of course, our biology also plays a role. Like some of us are genetically predisposed to be more likely or less likely to develop a mental disorder. You may have depression or anxiety running in your family, or any other mental disorder, or you may be on certain medications that mess with your hormones. That's going to influence your mood and your psychology. So let's not forget that there's a part that we can't really influence, and that there are medications that work for some people. What I want to focus on the most, and which is really where my clinical background is, which is cognitive psychology, because a big part of our mental health is also about what we're thinking and what all the things that are going on in our head. And I like to talk about cognition when I talk about mental health, because we cannot influence our physiology that much. We can take antidepressants, we can take drugs, but apart from that, there's not a lot that we can change about our genetics. We can foster our relationships, of course, but sometimes we are in social settings. If you're at a university where you don't really get along with the people, there's only so much you can do about that. But our cognition, that's something we have absolute control over. And this is usually where talking about mental health gets a bit tricky, because people don't like the fact that cognition plays such a big role in mental health. And some people really like it, because on the one hand, it means, hey, if you're not feeling mentally well, there's something you can do about it. But the flip side of that is, if you're feeling mentally unwell, there's something you can do about it. And that forces us to take responsibility for it. And I think a lot of times we're sometimes in that victim mentality. We're like, oh, there's nothing I can do about it. Like, this is just how it is. And then someone's like, no, you can do something about it. And you're like, excuse me? Like, who are you to tell me that this is my fault? So at this point, this is not about telling you that it's your fault that you're not mentally well, because it isn't. We see that there are lots of factors that interact to create your mental state. But I'm telling you, hey, it's really up to you. You can change it. Even if these factors that you can't control are very, very low, you can use your thoughts and your cognitive factors to increase your mental health. So one quote that I like to use is that in cognition, it's all about strengthening what we focus on and repeat. And like, let's talk about when you all learned math. Like when you were a little kid, you had to think about like, oh, 3 times 3, 9. But now when I say 3 times 3, you're going to be like 9. Like you don't even have to think about it because you've done it so often. And that's exactly how mental health works. Some of the things that we like positivity is just something that we have to practice until it becomes automatic. And that's why sometimes these cognitive tricks and tips that we can share in the realm of mental health seem a bit silly because you're like, oh, that like I can't force myself to think something. This seems kind of odd. This seems kind of awkward. But it's really about doing it so often until our brain does it automatically. So if you have a hard time being resilient, being happy, seeing things as a challenge as opposed to a failure, you have to force yourself to think about these things until they become automatic. So bear with me if I share some strategies with you where you're like, that's kind of weird, like that feels awkward, but it's really, really worth the time. And these are all neuroscientifically and like scientifically supported things that I'm going to share with you. So I'm going to be talking about 5 different things here, and they're all varying in difficulty, I would say. So I'm going to talk about an exercise that's called pocket beans and 3 things a day and the energy analysis. These are things that are really fairly easy to implement. Like you can say, I'm going to do this from now on every single day. It's not going to take you more than 3 minutes per day because we're all busy. I get it. So this is something fairly easy to do, and it's going to, you're going to see this effects after a while. This is not something that like today I'm going to focus a little bit more on long-term changes on how to grow our mental strength as opposed to acute stress intervention. So there's that part too, of course, and we can talk a little bit more about that later. But today really under the, hey, we're going to prepare for the next crisis. We're going to go to the mental gym now. I'm not talking about the, I am stressed, I am depressed, what should I do? I'm talking about the, hey, I'm feeling okay. I'm going to build my strength to become more resilient in the future. So this is something that you can really implement right away. These things are going to take a lot more work. So if you've ever played a sport or gone to the gym, you know that training takes time. And you're not going to meditate once or do the 3 things a day for a week and be like, all my problems are resolved. I'm happy. I'm fine. I'm never going to have a problem again. No. Just like going to the gym, this is about continuously practicing it. And over time, you're going to get stronger and stronger. And this is really a very sustainable way of taking care of yourself, because it's not about, oh, when I have depression, I'm going to take drugs, or when I'm feeling really horrible, I'm going to take a week off. But really, hey, there's always going to be challenges coming at us. I'm going to take time to go to my mental gym, so to say. So my first exercise is something that we call pocket beans. And I learned this really recently, actually, and I really like it because it really doesn't take you don't need anything for it, and it takes a really short time. And for that, so this exercise recommends beans. You can take anything else. You can take stones. You can take something that can be in your pocket for a while, I guess. And if you throw it into the laundry, it should probably not break. But just take 5 things in the morning and you put it into one side of your pocket. And then you go throughout your day, and every time something happens that makes you really, really happy or that you're really grateful for, you take one of the beans and you put it in your other pocket. So that hopefully at the end of the day, all your beans or all your stones have gone into the other pocket. And if you still have beans left over at the end of the day, maybe you can make a very conscious effort. Oh, what's something I can do for myself today? Maybe you're going to treat yourself to some ice cream. Maybe you're going to call a friend that you haven't spoken to in a long time. Maybe you're going to watch another extra episode of your favorite TV show. But really about cultivating what makes me happy every day and paying attention to that. And that's what I meant in the beginning when I talk about we strengthen what we focus on. And by this exercise, you you tell your brain, hey, there are so many good things in my life. And by doing this over and over again, that connection, and I'm going to get a bit neuroscientific here, between two synapses in your brain, it's going to get stronger. So after a few weeks of doing this, you're going to feel that you're going to see a lot more things that make you happy during the day, just because your brain has gotten better at picking out things that you like. So try this out and then tell me in 30 days whether you feel better, because science really shows that this works. Let's go to the other end of the spectrum, and that is meditation. And I assume that a lot of you may already be familiar with that. For those of you who aren't, meditation is really about focusing your attention on the present moment. And this is where I usually like to do a quick exercise, but for the sake of time, we don't have time for that, but you will find lots of things on the internet. There are great apps for this, where you can learn how to meditate. And it's really about learning how to be present in the moment. And if that sounds easy, for some of you, you're going to be like, oh my God, that's really hard, because my brain is usually everywhere but in the moment. Like, maybe I'll go back. See, I'm curious about this. Let me stop screen sharing for a moment, or I'll see your participants. Raise your hand very briefly if you're doing something else right now, or if you have thought about something else in the past 5 minutes than me talking at you. Who's doing something else right now, who's thinking about something else, whose mind has already drifted. So either I'm a very good speaker or you're all lying to me. Come on. Okay, I see a few brave ones who are really raising their hands up here. And this is really normal. Like, our brain does that. Like, we just drift off. Like, even if we're in a lesson that we find interesting, and I hope that you find this interesting right now, you will realize that your brain just goes into other places. And that's typically something that really influences our mental health. So meditation helps us to just really be present in where we are right now. And this is really part of this whole mental strength, because it has been shown to increase emotional intelligence. It's been shown to increase our attention span, and it's supposed to decrease our stress levels. And this is really something that you cultivate over many, many weeks, many, many months. But this is something that is probably the biggest thing that science has found in the past 20 years. And that's science. I mean, meditation has been around in religion for many, many, many years. But now science has really said, wow, we have put people into scientific scanners. We have looked at their brains and we really see a difference here. Meditation really does the trick. So if you're not already practicing meditation, I can highly recommend this. Okay, let's go back to something easier again. If you're like, wow, meditation is really scary, I don't know if I can do that right now. Let's go back to something easy. And that's the 3 positive things a day. And you can do this every morning or every evening. Maybe put a reminder on your phone so that you really make a habit out of it. But every day, write down 3 things you're grateful for. This is very similar to the being exercise, just that you just do it in one singular moment. And that can be anything. That can be, I am grateful because in the train station, someone smiled at me and it really made me feel better. Or I'm grateful that we have the internet and I can Google things, or I'm grateful for this blanket that keeps me warm, or I'm grateful for the air conditioning because I'm not super hot. So really small things. And this is again about just teaching your brain to pay attention to the positive things in our lives, because unfortunately by nature, we think about the negative things more. And that's just because of evolution. So this is about training your brain to be grateful and to remember all the positive things in your life. Another thing that I recommend doing is something that I call an energy analysis. And that's about thinking about all the different things that you do every day. And then you ask yourself, what things... I'm hearing someone. Is there something you want from me? Okay. You reflect on all the things that you do during the day, and then you really think critically, how much energy does this thing give me? And how much does this rob me? And this can be a bit more complex. So you may say, okay, well, studying, doing my homework for my favorite subject, psychology, gives me some energy, gives me like 20% of my energy, but it also robs me of 30% of energy. So when I study, I really tend to have less energy than when I started studying. And you think about all the different things about your life, what things give you energy and what things rob you of energy. And then really write down, maybe pin it somewhere in your room, or write it on your phone somewhere, something that reminds you to do more of the things that give you energy. And this, again, sounds like something very simple, but sometimes we're not even aware of the things that rob us of energy and give us energy. And it's really not the same for everyone. One of the best definitions of extroverted and introverted people is, do you gain energy by talking to other people, or does it rob you of energy if you talk to other people? So for example, I'm a very extroverted person most of the time. So I gain a lot of energy from talking to people. But I also know a lot of people who say, oh my God, like after I've spoken to someone for 5 hours, I need to be alone. So this is about reflecting on your own habits and your own things that you do during the life, and really ask yourself, what gives me energy and what robs me of energy? And how can I do more of the things that give me energy? Sounds simple. I dare you to try it. All right, let's get to the thing that probably is the hardest to implement and the hardest perhaps to understand, and that's about cognitive reframing. And bear with me, because cognitive reframing sounds really awkward, and it sounds sometimes a little bit unrealistic. But it's really about proactively trying to find a silver lining in difficult situations. And by that, I don't mean, oh my God, everything is fine. Like, that is toxic positivity. I'm not saying, hey, I don't know, like my parent is sick, and to be like, oh, I don't really have a problem, right? Like maybe your parent is like got a cold and is at home, and you're like, oh, but this is really not a problem. Of course it is. Cognitive reframing is not about just being silly and ridiculous about it. But cognitive reframing is, however bad the situation is, trying to find something positive in it. And that doesn't mean that you aren't aware that the situation is difficult, but just to force your brain to think about some of the things that are still positive. So COVID is a good example. We all agree that COVID is a net negative, but there's nothing we can do about it. So perhaps there is something, and I'm so sure that every one of you can at least find one thing that COVID actually gave them. And that does not mean that COVID didn't suck. But we can't change the fact that it sucked, but we can remind our brain that they were still positive things. So cognitive reframing is something that's going to feel very, very awkward in the beginning, because it feels like you have to be almost fooling yourself. And sometimes it's useful to actually just write things down, like, what bothers you at the moment? What are you sad about? And then saying, you know what, I'm allowed to be sad about this. But then there's still this one thing that is good about this. So I did a training a couple of weeks ago actually, I probably shouldn't talk about this here. Never mind. I'm not going to talk about this here. But yeah, let's take COVID, for example. I would like to hear your thoughts, like right into the chat. Like, what is one silver lining that you did get from COVID? Like for me, for example, I'm usually in a long distance relationship. That means my boyfriend lives in New York City, and I used to live in Indiana. So we were about, that's about a 2-hour plane ride apart. And COVID allowed us to move in together because we both had remote school. So although we both had family that was sick, we both had family who died, who passed away. And we don't say, oh, COVID was super fine, but we say, hey, we still had a silver lining because we got to spend more time with each other. So thank you. There's another person who said, yeah, someone got to spend a little bit more time with family. So this doesn't really take away from the fact that something is difficult, but it allows our brain to shift and be like, oh, but there are still positive things in our life. All right, so here's something for you. I'm pretty much done, and I'm happy to answer some questions if we have time. But since I'm talking a lot about mental health, and this has been something that I've been presenting a lot about in different situations in the past year, I think that there's a big need for young people to learn about mental health. And there's really not everything I can share. But if you're interested in learning more about this, I'm currently, let me stop screen sharing. I have this Google forum where I'm trying to understand how many people would be interested in a course. So because I'm doing this for KPMG at the moment anyway, and I would like to create a course for young people to talk about mental health, to learn more about mental health. And for me, I'm just trying to understand how many people will be interested in that. So I'm just sharing that link with everyone. So if you want to fill in that form, let me know if you'd be interested in that. And then I may sit down, if there are like enough people, if I have like 40, 50 people who would actually want to do that, then I can sit down and be like, okay, maybe I should do that. But it maybe not make sense to make it for like 3 people. So fill in that form if you're interested in like a 6-week listening to Julia thing. I also have some other things for you. I prepared these links. So you have some practical exercises. I created a Corona care package in the beginning of COVID that you can check out. It has a lot of more practical resources and even some of the things I just talked about. You have my website, you have my Instagram channel. I also gave 2 other talks about mental health that are a bit longer. I had a bit more time for that. They're both an hour, I think, and that's Staying Sane in a Crazy World, which I did with You're a Big Year, and Mental Health for Young Leaders, which I did with Global Changemakers. So you should check out those links if you say, like, this is interesting, I want to learn more. I talk about very different things in those 2 videos. So if you're interested in that, check that out. All right, this is me really trying to fit in a lot of content into 30 minutes. I hope I didn't speak too fast, and I hope that you find it valuable. Yeah, I'll give back to the moderators to see how much time we have, and I'm happy to answer some questions.
Thank you so much, Miss Julia. Actually, up until today, I hadn't realized that after a crisis is before a crisis, and a lot of topics were new to me. So the session was really fruitful, and I hope it will help us all to a great extent in the coming days. Thank you so much for your valuable time. And now, if audience, please, if you have questions, do drop it in the chat box. Or you can also raise your hands and you will be unmuted by our technical team. You can ask her your questions, please. Suman Paudel is raising hands. Please, technical team, I would like to request you to unmute him.
Hello, ma'am. Namaste.
Hello, please don't call me ma'am. I keep repeating this in these calls. Like, I'm like your age, y'all.
Okay, so I can call you Julia, right?
Yeah, please call me Julia.
Okay, so Julia, I'm actually fascinated about one thing, that you're a TEDx speaker, and I loved your session. It was amazing. Yeah, but I was having net issues, so I couldn't like attend it fully. But I actually took the key insights, and I loved it a lot. But I wanted to ask you about the TEDx speaking. Actually, I have been fascinated with the speakers who actually give speeches there, and I'm very much interested in public speaking. So can you give me some tips or something I can do or practice to be able to be a TEDx speaker in the future? Is there anything, maybe tips or something?
Well, I feel there's 2 questions hidden here. One, what are tips on public speaking? I believe I gave a session on public speaking here. Do you have the recording of that to send?
We already had the session, and we
Yeah.
do also have a recording.
Awesome. See, so then I have the extended version. I have the half-hour answer to your question somewhere. I think the short version is to just do it a lot, and don't wait for permission. Don't wait for people to give you permission to do it. Like, use any opportunity. Like, ask your university teacher if you can give a 5-minute speech on something. Like, use your phone and put it online if you need that kind of pressure to really do something. Like, use those small steps, and make sure that you use social media to just share. Like, you can just literally set yourself a goal to write a speech every single week and share it on your social media and share it with your friends, so that you have a reason, you have other people to hold you accountable. And that way also your network knows, hey, you're interested in this. And then if someone hears through 3 other people that there is an opportunity open, and they will let you know about it.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So any more questions? So we do have a question from Mr. Vikrant Panjiar. And the question is, since our theme is to help people maintain their mental health through music, we would like to know your thoughts on music and what genre of music are you more inclined towards?
I like that question a lot. Music and mental health is actually not my area of expertise, but there's a lot of cool stuff on there. There's like music therapy, and see, that's something where you can do a session on that. I have a very weird taste in music. I like musicals a lot, like any kind, like the Broadway musicals and like silly musicals. My boyfriend is a great singer. Like he's a really good musical actor. So I guess I like the things that he sings. I guess I have to say that. I'm like legally obliged to say that because this is recorded. He may see this eventually. So the official answer, anything my boyfriend sings. And yeah, everything that has to do with musicals. I really love musicals.
So I guess now I would like to request the audience to please open their video camera. We would like to capture our moment with Miss Julia. Please. I would like to request technical team to take a selfie. So I think our technical team has taken a picture. So thank you so much for your time. It was wonderful listening to you, and I hope the session was helpful to all of us. And we have a small gift from our site. So I would like to I would like to request the technical team to present it on the screen. We hope you like it.
Aww. Thank you. This is very sweet. I love the picture. A token of love. That means so much to me. Thank you all for spending some time with me this Saturday afternoon.
Thank you so much.
Have a lovely rest of your sessions and good luck to all the contestants.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.